Hey everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. So I am still glazing, so much glazing, so much glazing. I'm on my second to last color, and I'm just sort of doing a few of these taller pieces so I can do a kiln mode, finish off a kiln mode with some taller stuff and get them all in kind of one go. So I'm breaking my normal rule where I only glaze one color at a time. So I'm going to glaze all my pictures and then a couple vases to sort of fill up the shelf. Anyways, I've been trying to make a video for the past couple days, but because the world's been so crazy and things have been kind of feeling really overwhelming and out of control, the videos haven't gone well, to say the least. Been a little overwhelmed and kind of just emotional, worried about stuff, which I think is normal right now. But unfortunately, well, or fortunately, there's still things to get done, so it sort of I'm able to sort of come to the studio, get some work done. And just take care of business. You know, it's like I think right now is kind of one of those times where it would be really nice to be able to do some creative stuff and engage my brain a little bit, but I've got so much sort of busy work and tedium that I'm kind of, just numbing it up and getting this stuff done and going slow and steady. I'm really grateful we kind of had this crazy snowstorm, and it's back down to 0 degrees, which is craziness. So obviously that's why I'm in my scarf. I did walk over here today, though. It was nice to walk out in the beautiful white snow, and just get outside a little bit. I feel like I've been hunkered down in the studio or at the house, a little, like all of us, I think. But it's so beautiful out right now. I mean, I swear we've gotten like 1.5 feet of snow in the last 2 days, which is crazy since Helena really hasn't gotten hardly any snow at all this winter. And right before the snow, I saw all these beautiful little, all my little early bulbs were starting to like push out of the ground, which I'm like, oh, I hope they all survive. Anyways, what I wanted to talk a little bit about today, so I'm just painting on some glazes now, and this is one of those things that as much as like we can read directions, I think sometimes when we use commercial glazes, especially if we're new at it, we don't quite understand what 3 coats means or looks like. And so like that to me is 1 coat, right? I don't want to see any dry spots when I move on to this next section. I want it to have a really nice base coat. That first coat is going to be kind of thinner than the next coat, and that's how it sort of builds. And so that's, you can sort of see I just loaded up. I use these really cheapy hardware store brushes. What I like about them is that they hold the glaze and then they release the glaze. I don't like those brushes that really hold on to the glaze. It's really hard to get it off then, because these are kind of really a little bit more gelatinous than like glazes that you're going to dip or use for dipping. Another thing I wanted to talk about, in my book I have a clear glaze recipe, and I use that as liners for all of my pictures or vase forms, the flower bricks, anything that's gonna sort of sit with water in it, I tend to line with this clear glaze. And the clear glaze is one that I formulated a long time ago when I was in grad school, when I was testing out like several different temperatures of like 04 and cone 1 and cone 3 or cone 6. So it's a really versatile clear glaze that works on a range of stuff, but also fits the clay well, so there's no crazing in it. And it's in my book if you're interested in the recipe. But anyways, it's something that saves me money. These little pints are not cheap. They're usually about $15, roughly now, about $15 a pop. And unfortunately, like I usually have to buy them. It's not cheaper to buy them like in a gallon size or dry. I actually get the best rate if I buy them a dozen at a time. And luckily for me, I use 5 colors, so it's really easy to sort of just stock up. And usually, I only usually buy a dozen once a year, like typically. It's like it usually gets me through quite a bit of pottery. You'd be surprised. Right now I'm kind of in a mad making session, so I probably will go through a little bit more this year. But I usually just try to buy a dozen at a time just to get the rate, because I think they go from like $15 a pop to $9 a pop, or $10, which is a huge savings per pint. So anyways, that's something that I do, and I usually do that at like Georgie's, or I have to order from a supplier far away from Helena. But anyway, so just real quick again, I'm gonna glaze this section. So you can see like I'm sort of loading up this glaze. And I just wanna make sure that I get a really even, decent coat on this. And so that means basically getting some glaze on there and then moving it around and then adding more glaze. This is, you can kind of see. And so anytime the brush goes dry, like that is not a coat of glaze, right? You really want to make sure that you have some glaze material on there. It's just like dipping a pot into glaze and holding it, doing it like a 10-second count. That's what you want the glaze surface of commercial glazes to be too, to really get a true representation of what the glaze looks like. And so you can see that, and I'm not overly careful with it. I really just I'm not worried about like my brush marks or anything like that. I just want to make sure that you see how this has gone white? I don't want it to go white. Like I want to leave it wet. Have it that wet look, then I move on to the next section. And so then what I do, which you won't see, so like this guy here, let me move this over there. Okay, picture. So I just did 2 coats yesterday. I see a little unglazed section. This is lined actually on the interior to about here, and then I glaze this sort of top interior edge. And then this, just now I just put on a 3rd coat, okay? And so that 3rd coat will take the longest to dry. So in between each coat, like first coat dries pretty quick because the clay is dry, it's pulling all that moisture into it. Second coat will take a little while to dry, and then the 3rd coat will take the longest to dry. So just give yourself that time, especially if you're using commercial glazes. You know, this is why often it's a 2-day process for me. Like a lot of these things, like yesterday, let's see if you can sort of see, where am I? There we are. So all of these guys, I just lined all the interiors, and then I actually did a bit of the interiors of the foot here. And then I just let them sit overnight so that today when I go to paint on glaze, I'm not battling that interior moisture and exterior moisture, and things will dry relatively quick. But most likely, like, those won't go into the kiln today. They'll go into the next firing, because most likely I will have to do a 3rd coat tomorrow. Just because it's chilly, the heat's on, but it just takes time. And I've rushed in the past, and it just never pays to rush. It's just too exhausting to rush. You know what I mean? It's just like, just why? Just be patient. Like, if you are like doing this in this way that we all have deadlines and things we're trying to work towards, schedule in time to glaze. Like, don't just leave it to the last minute. Like I said in my previous post, it takes, if you want to get good at glazing and really being able to take time with your work in that sort of, in that area, then you need to schedule that time. If you treat it like an afterthought, your results are going to be an afterthought. And so really just think about that. For like this process right now, getting ready for St. Croix, my goal was to take 2 months, January and February, to make work, and just make work and biscuit, not to glaze it, just to really give myself time to have some creative space and momentum behind my making, and not the interruption of glazing. And so then I've given myself 2 months to process that. So this month is all about glazing and getting stuff through the sandblasting, and I may have time for another making cycle, but I really want to not have to push myself. Like I kind of mentioned before, glazing is, I was just talking to a friend about this, like my body gets so tired and so burnt out, like when I'm glazing, like my hands hurt more, I'm more stiff, like I find that I forget to get up and move and do the things that are really important so that I don't wear myself out, and I get dehydrated, my hands get dry. Like it feels like everything falls apart when you start glazing. So be mindful that you're not also then putting 14-hour glazing sessions into your life, because why? Just why? Anyway, so that's that. So first coat on this guy done, but you can see like it's almost ready to do the 2nd coat, which I'll probably just go ahead and I may let it sit a little bit till I can touch it. But the other thing too I've noticed that I've been trying to do, and just to save my hands, because I don't know why, but I don't know if you guys find this, like, so I will be holding a mug. Let me grab a mug. So for those of you that dip glazes in addition to those that paint, like I'm holding the cup like this, so it's gripped between my fingers. My thumb joint kills me by the end of the day if I'm doing that a lot. And so what I'm finding I'm going to do is I'm going to put things, like if they're dry, I can put it on top of the banding wheel, paint that glaze on, and then pull it off instead of holding it like this, especially when I've got 40 cups to hold in an afternoon, like, and doing that twice. That's just a lot of sort of this weird thing I'm doing with my hand, and I want to just be careful with that, because I do kind of hate when I go home and I'm like, really, my hands are sore, it makes me unhappy, makes me think, what am I doing with my life? Anyways, so that's sort of all I have to say about that, this sort of process. But I just wanted to give you guys a quick little demo about glazing and thoughts about commercial glazing. It again takes some practice to get it right. I've had assistants in the past that have helped me, and often it's like that first, what I can usually get done, that's the funny thing is like training someone to help you make your work is sometimes, it's very labor intensive and takes some time, and they're not going to get it right because the first couple times. And so I've really had to monitor what I do so that I can share that information with people. Because I think there's also, my work isn't super precious to me, but to other people, assistants particularly, it's pretty precious and they worry about messing it up. And that hesitation can cause kind of this overwhelming, like just scarcity situation that happens with it. So I'm like, be generous with the glaze, but also remember it costs $15 a pint, so, but we got to get the glaze on there. So just remember it'll take a little time to get it right. And just to make note of like, oh, okay, that's why sometimes if you're glazing one color at a time and you're doing things similarly, it will turn out in a way that you're like, oh, that's what I did that time and I don't like the results. I need to put more glaze on, or I actually need to put less glaze on because it started dripping everywhere, stuff like that. So anyways, just a quick shout out from this Sunday studio time. I hope everyone is well and being safe and try not to worry too much, and just taking care of yourself. I'll try to figure out a new video next week to talk about. Hopefully I'll be pushing through my glaze and be done next week. Oh, I did take a sandblasting video I forgot to post. Maybe I'll post that too. I wasn't super thrilled with it because it was kind of a hard... Sandblasting is a weird thing. But I will try and remember to post that when I get home. Okay, have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Talk to you soon. Bye.